Hey Kev, let's follow this trail over here. This looks like there might be something waiting down there.
All right. Hey, wait a minute. Do you hear that?
Yeah, I thought it was just me. What the heck is that?
I don't know what that is. Whoa, do you smell that too?
That's unbelievable. Hey, look.
What the?
Hey, look, those branches are moving over there.
What the heck is that?
Holy cow, is that what I think it is? Look at that thing.
Oh my God.
It's a freaking Sasquatch. Welcome to the Bigfoot Terror in the Woods Sightings and Encounters podcast. I am your host, W.J. Sheehan, author of the series of books, Bigfoot Terror in the Woods Sightings and Encounters. And boy, do I have a bunch of volumes. If you're new to the podcast and me as an author, I initially had volumes 1 through 12, all available at Amazon and Audible. And I now have a new series, the regional series, 7 volumes we're working on. The Northeast, the Southeast, and Pacific Northwest are all available in paperback, ebook, Kindle, and audiobook. And the Southwest paperback and Kindle version is out now as well. So please have at it as we continue. Support the effort, and I know you're going to dig on some really groovy reading, my friends. I guarantee. And now, may I introduce you to my brother and co-host, KJ Sheehan. Kev, how are you?
I'm doing great, Bill. We got beautiful weather down here in North Carolina, and I'm going to have to put a map on the wall to keep track of all these volumes that you have.
Yeah, well, it all started actually quite a few years ago with people saying, like, too bad you didn't have things together like in my area, because volumes 1 through 12 are a cornucopia of reports. I mean, you could be in one chapter reading about upstate New York, and the next chapter is in Louisiana. So finally, I reorganized last winter with the help of our buddy Rick from Ohio, our intrepid reporter. And he put together all of the books organized by state and also the volumes and the book that they came out of. It was an incredible work he did, and really in a brief amount of time, he solved the puzzle for me. So that's what started it. Then I just divvied up North America. I took a big map. I wrote down how many accounts were on each state. I wrote it on each state on the Atlas map. And then I kind of decided how to organize them into books where they weren't too crazy. The Pacific Northwest book is almost 380 pages, and a couple of the others are around 150 or so.
All right. But, well, you got a lot of creatures up there in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, I mean, that was the max area for sightings. And that's no surprise, right? Oregon, Washington, Alaska, Northern California, that's definitely. But listen, let me tell you something. I think people are going to be shocked at how many. I had one state that didn't have a sighting. I believe it was North Dakota.
Well, they had sightings. There was no one there to see it.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. And even if they saw it, who's reporting it to me?
Who could they tell it to?
I guess no one, But
by the way, folks, I love North Dakota. I'm not hating on it.
No, we're just saying, I mean, that's the way it is.
It's a rural place.
Yep. So have at it, folks. There's a lot of good data in there, a lot of what I would call spine-tingling accounts, too, man. And it's good. It's a coffee table book. I call it a coffee table book because you could just pick this thing up at any time, spend 10 minutes, 15 minutes reading, and put it down. It's not like, you have to keep reading chapter after chapter to find out the rest of the story,
No, I mean, each chapter is basically a different account. So it's ideal if you've been away from reading for a while, it's great to pick up and just read a chapter and put it back down. Maybe read a chapter before you go to sleep each night and scare the bejesus out of yourself while you're sleeping. Dreaming of a dog man coming after you.
Oh, my God. So what
Looking
do we...
in the window on the second story. With glowing red eyes.
Smearing snot from his long snout on the glass.
On the window.
Yeah.
Lovely.
A little mucus dripping down.
What's wrong with that? A little snarf. Dog man snarf.
Like a Labrador slobbering against the car window.
You think the dog man snarf kind of glows in the dark afterwards? I mean, it could. I don't want to find out either, folks.
Well, I know his butt's going to be glowing after I shoot him with some buckshot.
Whoa.
So what do we got today, bro, in our Cryptids in the News and Other Oddities segment?
Yeah, we are going to go out to the Marble Mountains in Northern California, and we're going to look at an account that we looked at years ago, known as the Marble Mountain Bigfoot video. But since we did our last review, there's been some reworking of the video, some image stabilization, a little bit more zoom, a little bit more focus than we looked at last time around. And this video, you know, is one of the longest, if not the longest, video of Bigfoot that's ever been recorded, or at least that's ever been recorded and shared with the public. So it's between 3 and 4 minutes long.
Okay.
And Marble Mountain is up on the northern edge of California, very close to the border of Oregon, just west of Mount Shasta in California. So it's in a hotbed. We were just talking about the regions like the Pacific Northwest.
Yes.
This is a hotbed for the hairy man.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, there's more sightings over there than anywhere, and for a prolonged period of time, even that we know about.
Exactly.
Wow.
And if you recall this video originally, Bill, this was where there was a guy named Jim Mills who was a campus life youth group leader there in Northern California, and he took a bunch of kids. They don't say how old they are. They sound like they're maybe 12 years old, 10 years old, you know, maybe 14, something like that. And they're out in the backcountry there in Northern California. So they say that they're 20 miles from the nearest road, so kind of in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're hiking along, and they start videotaping when they see this shelter that's built out of, like, branches, but thick branches of a tree and, like, boughs of leaves and boughs of pine needles.
Yeah.
You know, off of a pine tree, built like a little bit of a shelter with, like, a makeshift lean-to over it, again, made out of trees. And what's interesting when they find this shelter is that it looks like, or it appears that none of the limbs were cut with tools.
Yeah.
So, you know, not a saw, not an axe, but everything's just kind of broken.
Yeah, and you're 100% right, Kev. The first time I saw that, there is no way this was staged beforehand or by them. Some of those limbs appeared to be 6 to 8 inches in diameter and literally torn out of the tree.
Yeah, snapped off.
Yeah, they were new growth, which first of all really doesn't snap, right? You ever try
the
snapping it?
Green wood.
Green wood, you don't snap it off like a dead branch.
No.
And they were torn, bark and all, off of some type of spruce or Douglas fir, whatever is over there, and used to make this shelter. And a lot of it was green, obviously very fresh.
100%.
And that was a big shelter, too. That was no little...
It wasn't for a little baby Bigfoot.
Yeah, no. It was meant to house something of substantial size.
Right. So they're looking at this, though, and they start videotaping it, but they don't know that it's a Bigfoot. You know, it's a church youth group. They're not out on a Bigfoot hunt. They're just exploring the countryside and, you know, getting closer to God, ideally, right?
Yeah, yep.
And this is back in 2001. So back, 20-something years ago.
Right.
And then you're looking up on the ridgeline. So it's daytime, folks. And there's a ridgeline of the mountain in front of them. and they're looking up on it, and the sky is behind the ridgeline, again, daytime, and you see this silhouette of something walking down the ridgeline from right to left in front of them.
Yeah.
And they zoom in, with the old-time video camera, and, it looks like a Bigfoot, but it's far away, probably close to a mile away.
Right.
But they zoom in pretty close on it, and you can see that its arms are really long, like down to its knees, and it's walking upright in like this quirky way. It doesn't have a backpack on or anything like that. And right along the ridgeline, it's walking. And they film it again for between 3 and 4 minutes, and they're kind of making jokes about it. So this guy, Jim Mills, who's the leader, is like, at one point, he's like, look, he sees us, and he's saying, hey, get away from my camp. You know what I mean? Like he's trying to keep the kids a little entertained, right?
Yeah.
And then another one of the kids, probably you or I as a kid, Bill, is like, let's shoot him with a tranquilizer gun and drag him back in a cage and show him to the town.
Yeah, and the whole time, he's someone, whether it's Jim Mills or whoever it was, is constantly directing others to where to look because he's got it zoomed on the camera.
Exactly, and it's pretty far away.
Very far away. I mean, you got to be looking at that. Had to be at least a mile.
A mile away. That's what they say.
Yeah, a long ways and up.
Now, folks, it looks close in the video, and I will post the video on our website, Bigfoot Terror in the Woods, under episodes, under podcast 274. And you take a look at it.
Yeah, now, Kev, the only thing that saves us with that video is the fact that he was directly on the precipice of the ridgeline, and there's like a white sky behind him. That's perfect.
100%.
Perfect for a silhouette.
100%. It wouldn't have been, you probably wouldn't have seen it if it wasn't on the ridgeline.
That's right. But the silhouette of this thing and the quirky walk. Now, I'm the first one to call something a fraud. I'm getting pretty good at this, having seen so much, heard so much. The only way, to me, that this could have been perpetrated as a fraud, now hear me out, if a tall guy was planted on the ridgeline beforehand with some type of like body extension suit, picture like a suit with like extra tall shoulder pads and some type of huge head and shoulder assembly to make you look like frickin' Herman Munster. And then started his walk and had some elongated fake arms put on that he could flail around. Do I think that happened? No. But I'm just saying that's the only way this could have been set up.
Right. And this is a church youth group in the middle of nowhere.
That's right. And they were proven to be a church youth group.
Oh, yeah.
This just wasn't a group of people who said, we are a church youth group.
No, and it's more interesting than that, actually, folks. So I said this video was shot in 2001. But the video actually didn't come out into public, really, for anyone to see until 2011.
Yeah.
After Jim Mills passed away.
Yeah, 10 years.
Yeah, so he passes away. And then, that maybe they don't say it, but maybe his family found this video, right? Said, what the heck is this? And then they start watching it, and they hear him talking to the kids about this Bigfoot up on the ridgeline.
So here you go, Kev. To further muddy the waters, Jim apparently told nobody.
Right.
It was only on his whatever that it was discovered basically accidentally by people reviewing videos, probably looking for nice family memories or something. And they come across this Bigfoot clip like, what the heck do we have here?
Right. And the kids, as far as we know, didn't tell anybody. Or if they did, no one believed them because there was no video.
Right.
And they were probably out there for a week
yeah.
camping and stuff, and who knows what else they saw. And if they weren't looking through the lens of the camera and seeing the zoom, they would have been like, what's Mr. Mills talking about?
Well, look, and only Jim apparently had the camera. Nobody else could take the film home.
No, it's not like they had a TV out there either. Like, said, hey, let's plug it into this 48-inch flat screen and Let's take a look at what we saw tonight while we're in the tent with the generator and the satellite dish.
Yeah, no, that didn't happen. Did not happen.
That's one of the things that did not happen. So super, super interesting, and it looks really big. Like, he estimated at the time that the Bigfoot was about 9 feet tall. And it was skinny, but, big on the upper side of it, big shoulders, And then it would walk back and forth, kind of like it was anxious, like, like it was pacing to the left, to the right, to the left, to the right, and turn around quickly, like as it was looking down the ridgeline at where they were. So
you could see it too, Kev. It really did seem to be turning toward them a couple of times.
100%.
Like it knew they were there and that was its place, like wondering like what to do. We don't know. How can you read the mind?
No, and that's where Jim was making the joke that it was like, he's like, oh, look, it's saying now. Now, he wasn't upset about it. Of course, he's leading the group too, So he's like, look, it's looking at us saying, hey, what are you doing in my house there? Hey, get out of my house, in kind of a joking way.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Really good, Kev. I'm glad you stepped back to this video because things are worth reviewing and taking a second or a third or a fourth look at.
No, and years back, Outside Magazine did a great article, our friends at Outside Magazine, saying what the top 10 Bigfoot videos of all time were. And this was in the top 10, and I mean, I think it was in the top 4.
Yeah, no, it's
in my book.
It's way
so
up there.
It wasn't like it was 9 or 10. It's fantastic. And again, it's daytime. Long video, 3 to 4 minutes is a long time for a Bigfoot video, folks. Usually it's like 20 seconds is good, So 3 or 4 minutes and just fantastic. And with this new image stabilization, again, I'll post it. Check it out. Tell us what you think.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic, Kev. Absolutely fantastic. One of the best pieces of film I've ever seen. The most recent one was the one captured by the kayaker crossing across that shallow stream.
Yeah, that was in like Alaska or something, right?
Remember that? There were the overhead electrical wires. That was, to me, that was legit. To me, Marble Mountain, of course, Patterson Gimlin.
Yep.
And then I don't need film. I have had some outstanding witnesses, and including my friend Dave in Oregon, and just fantastic people, totally credible, stand-up Americans. I have zero reason to doubt them. Jason, if you're listening, bro, I love you. Jason, the hand at Pikes Peak, a guide for 30 years. The guy is just uber dripping with credibility. I have no reason to believe that shy of photographs, these individuals are truthful and men of great integrity. So, there you go, Kev. I don't need, you see, I never saw a Bigfoot, folks. That doesn't mean I don't believe some of the stuff I'm seeing and hearing is true. I've never been on the moon. I've never been to freaking Thailand, but I could read and learn and hear about what things are going on there and believe them to be true.
But you're not saying the moon is on Thailand, do you?
No, but it is made of cheese, as I understand.
Thailand or the moon?
Hopefully sharp cheddar. So when I get there, I can have my fill.
Vermont sharp cheddar?
Yes, on the moon.
All right. Now we're cooking with gas.
Oh, my God. Well, Kev, let me dig into I got a couple of accounts here. We'll see where we'll go with this. And I mentioned Thailand intentionally because this first account was from Thailand.
Ooh.
And this unusual sighting was shared with me by a guy named Chris Mayo, actually a resident of here, my home state, New York. And this is what he saw while visiting Thailand. At the time, Bill, which was not that long ago, 2016 to be exact, Thailand was on my bucket list of travel destinations globally. So I had booked an adventurous trip to the region of Nam Dinh Dang. I'm not so interested in your touristy location, preferring to get into the cultural roots of places when I travel. I had told as much to my travel agent before booking the trip, and she had organized a rigorous agenda while in Thailand. Part of the plan was a hike to the waterfalls at Nam Dinh Dang, where this sighting actually occurred. This area around the river leading up to and at the falls themselves was a dense rainforest type of jungle. There were 4 of us that day, including the guide Som Chai. Here and there we would catch a glimpse of the river filled with massive gray boulders that also lined its bank. The trail we followed was well used, which is narrow yet passable. Som Chai hacking his way through overgrown spots. He told us that some plants multiply here and that if he cut them off the way he had last week, they would be back the following week. So that's pretty bizarre if you think about how fast this jungle...
Yeah, well, it's like a rainforest, right?
Yeah, but a week, you know?
Yeah.
Everything was green and lush, every shade of green you could imagine glistening in the sunlight with the constant undertone of the river, ever present to our hearing. I knew that we were nearing the falls simply because you could hear them getting louder and louder as we hiked. Some Chai saying that we were almost there, and then we were. We had stopped in an area, standing next to a secondary or overflow pool below the pool under the central falls. Allow me to set the stage for you for what is about to happen regarding this sighting of the creatures. First, some large boulders form somewhat of a sluiceway or entrance to the pond in front of us. This pond, curving around through the jungle, returns to the river. Next, there was a massive tree on our right-hand side with nothing but jungle behind it, and flanking it, the main pool and the falls being seen by us looking upward from our position. So they were at a little lower point here, and this, falls and its pond was somehow sealed from completely overflowing onto their position. To our left was this sluiceway or overflow, through which water flowed continuously from the main pool. Next to this sluice was a wall of bright green foliage forming a large hedge blocking our view beyond them, which would be the pool and the forest on the other side of the pool. Our end goal was to get on top of the falls, but we had stopped here for the moment. The falls were only perhaps 20 or 30 feet tall, but the noise was deafening as the spray and mist swirled below them, forming a haze to the eyes enveloping the main pool. Having, of course, never been here before, I had no idea how deep the main pool was or anything else. I had not even been atop the falls yet, standing below them and looking through this angled window formed by the boulders and the hedges I just described to you. And then it happened. Let me say this first, Bill. Nothing there, including ourselves, could have possibly heard something arriving at or leaving this location. That's how deafening the rushing water was. Now, looking up, out from this hedgerow, appears the upper torso of a giant black creature, the hedgerow being, say, 6 or 7 feet tall. Whatever it was had stood up, enabling us to see it. As soon as that happened, a second black creature appeared, walking through this window I had just described earlier, passing directly through our field of view, about 6 feet tall. Of course, we had no idea what, if anything, they may be standing on or walking on to judge their actual height correctly. But they were both enormous and sturdily built. At that time, we were no more than 50 to 60 feet away from the two of them. That is close, man. That is how close we were. Some chai looked at us, mouthing, "Ape man." And just as he said that, we all had turned to look back as the one which had just walked by us reappeared, stopped, and looked directly at us. Its face immediately reminded me of the Planet of the Apes costuming. They had human-looking eyes and the look of a chimpanzee. Both were soaking wet from being near the falls and perhaps even gone into the pool for food or maybe cleansing. We didn't know. It immediately walked behind the hedgerow, which is where the other one had moved down behind, and we saw neither of them again. Some chai had us continue a short distance to where we were now above the falls, looking out over the pool that previously we had been below. Now seeing everything, there were boulders below the surface at the pool's edge and everywhere else. The pool appeared to be deep in some spots, but we were not to know for sure. Thankfully, all our group were gamers and not freaking out when this occurred. There was nowhere to run and hide anyway. These, to my eyes, were what we call Bigfoot creatures, which some chai had rightfully called ape men. The one that had risen from behind the hedges had massive upper shoulders, the soaking wet fur forming its outline, while the one we saw walking moved just like you or I would, extending its long arms and legs to move. It was incredible. Pretty wild, Kev, huh? Thailand?
Amazing. I've been there, not out in the jungles, so.
You know, a lot of Vietnam vets, I wouldn't say a lot, some of them that were there talked about the rock apes.
Oh, yeah.
Some men talked about gunning them down.
Yep.
Them charging them and actually throwing rocks at them.
Yep.
So, you know, everybody isn't a horse's ass and telling a story. You know what I mean? I had a Green Beret talking about it once, you know, and if you're not going to believe one of them badasses, then there's nothing I can do for you.
No, and by the way, we got Veterans Day coming up. I believe them.
That's right, man. Happy Veterans Day to all you guys that are in service to our country or have served. We are in support of
Saved
you.
our butts.
Yeah, absolutely.
No doubt.
Pretty wild, Kev, huh?
That is a fantastic account, Bill. I think that's the first time we went to Thailand.
Yeah, well, it's the only time.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, I only have one Thailand encounter, and that is it. Now
That's in the Thailand volume.
Yeah, the Thailand. You know, now, unfortunately, with these regional books, I don't have enough what I would call miscellaneous accounts to make another book.
Eventually, you'll have the international version.
Well, I don't know, Kev. It would take a lot, you know. I didn't count them, but let's just say I have a dozen from around the world.
It'll be the international pamphlet.
Yeah. Yeah, like freaking 15 pages or something.
Hey.
Anyways, now I'm going to bring you somewhere else.
All right. Buckle up.
All right. And that somewhere else happens to be Alaska.
Ooh.
And this second sighting came to me by way of Prince of Wales Island. It seems the hairy man may have found a home on the island, which we already know. And once again, where you find bears, you find Sasquatch. This is what Stan Harrison had to say. A friend and retiree, Mark Peterson, and I had booked a hunt on Prince of Wales in 2005. Having been there before, we used the same guide service on the previous trip, having been a successful hunt. We were bow hunting for blackies, black bears, that is. Their methodology was a simple one. In the early part of the day, we'd go out by boat to areas where they had bait stations placed on the island. The bait station being nothing more than a 50-gallon blue plastic drum with a large hole cut in the side of it. The guide brought with us each day a large bag of bait pellets, pouring them into the opening and all around the front of the drum, spilling out onto the ground. He then placed trail cameras near the drum to see what came to eat. If any good pictures were on the camera, more bait would be added the following day. Then we would set up a small gas stove, dig this, Kev, cooking slabs of bacon in a pot to further entice bears to come in, scenting the intense smell of bacon cooking. Who would have
It
thought?
might bring me in, Bill.
It bring me in too, man.
I'm pretty hungry right now.
Don't shoot, I'm hungry. On our first day returning after baiting the station, it had been torn down and dragged about 25 yards away. One of the cameras revealed a large black bear as the culprit, so we set it up in the area again, rebaiting the station, cooking up the bacon, and waiting. Well, nothing came. This scenario played out for several days following, which was very unusual. The last time the activity was intense, to say the least, several years earlier. I could see the frustration on the guy's face, his only thoughts being that someone else may be baiting somewhere up the flats, the bears being drawn off to them for whatever reason. 5 days in, we decided to move and do a little stalking on foot, hoping to locate and get close enough to a blackie to put an arrow in it while the bait stations were left working. The stalking had not worked out, and although we did see some bears, we could not close the 50 yards or less mark for a good shot. That night at the cabin, one of the two guides working at the bait stations behind the scenes said that a station had been taken that he could not even find. In other words, the entire drum and its contents were gone, but that is not all. The trail camera had been taken from the tree. The only thing left behind on the ground was the broken plastic buckle that tightly held it to the tree. The fact that the clasp was broken and not removed to open the belt was indicative that it was yanked from the tree. Now, drums do get knocked down and rolled around by the bears. They are trying to get more of the bait to fall out in the ground. Cameras also can get damaged occasionally, but this was something different. I never had a barrel and a camera disappear without a trace. The items were somewhere on the island, but not to be found within a considerable perimeter of where they were left. The area was reset with bait and a camera, and we returned the following day. After having cooked the bacon, Mark and I took positions with our backs against some trees and waited. It was near the end of the day when a smaller black bear came into view in the trees, sniffing around the perimeter out of range. Not large enough to take anyway, but it was a bear, which was good. The bear had stopped and turned, looking back into the woods, and then bolted. This was a good sign of something larger having scared it off. The larger boars chase the younger ones in this manner, so I am thinking of getting ready for some action, fully expecting something big to come into view. As something huge did come into view. Da-da-da-da.
Mm-hmm. Was that the Royal Trumpet?
No, that was the Chicago Blues Band.
Dramatic Chicago Blues Band.
Yes. Okay. Now, Mark was about 30 yards from my position, and I could see his left arm and shoulder overhanging the side of a tree. We each had a different view of the perimeter, and we are positioning ourselves for separate and safe shots should the opportunity arise. The forest was strewn with deadfall, large standing pines, depending on where you looked. Visibility was limited to, say, from 10 yards to 50 at most, based on where and what paths something had walked in on. I noticed Mark's arm moving. I said to myself he had seen something and was beginning to position himself and his bow for a potential shot at it, and I kept watching. What happened next was so strange that if I could not see and hear it myself, I would not believe it. Finally, Mark actually shouts, "What the?" Jumping to his feet. I, of course, jumped myself, looking in the direction that he was, catching the side view of the front half of a large Sasquatch turning away and moving out of sight. As I learned later, Mark had seen it front on, stepping into a lane formed by the trees directly in front of him. He didn't want to stop for anything, and the two of us now making our way to the shore and the boat. The guides could not believe it when we told them what happened, one of them jokingly saying that now we knew what happened to the drum and the camera and why there were not many bears seen. Mark described a 7-foot-tall, hair-covered beast with a pale-covered face 4 feet wide at the shoulders. He said it made direct eye contact with him when he had shouted, already turning to leave. It could not see us until the right moment had presented itself, just like we could not see it because of the many trees. This creature had arrived like a phantom and left in the same fashion, and it scared the living crap out of both of us. Neither of the guides had ever seen one, living and working on the island for years, having heard tales of it. It does make sense that it would live there, with the abundant food supply and the unending and dense forestation the island provides. A great source of both cover and habitat. If bears can survive and thrive, so can they, however many there may be. Pretty wild, Kev, huh?
Man, it's wild, Bill. And, I've spent a fair amount of time up there in Alaska and seen the big brown bears, otherwise known as grizzlies, but they call them brown bears up there.
Yep.
And, man, I know, it was modern day when I was up there since we've been doing this podcast. And it's like, I remember looking at them running up on the side of the hill, through this brush, which they have this plant up there called Devil's Club. Oh. Which is just covered in thorns and stuff, so you can't walk into the brush anyway. But the bears get through it. I'm sure the Bigfoot gets through it too. But, you knew, man, if there were these big bears there, there's got to be, and there is such a thing as a hairy man. Now, hairy man's got to be up here too.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But a couple of great accounts. Talk about opposite ends of the spectrum, Thailand and Alaska.
Fantastic.
What's the mileage between Thailand and Alaska, would you estimate?
Oh, a long way. Let me see here. Let's ask my friend Google.
It's got to be like a 24-hour plane flight or something.
Oh, it is. I could tell you that, but the mileage is different too.
Yeah.
Alaska.
Yeah.
Let's see what the Google says.
All right. Let's have a Google.
Of course, it tells me in kilometers. Come on, people. Well, Bill, to answer your question, it's 9,122 kilometers.
Okay, and a kilometer is about, it's got to be like 7,000 miles or something.
That's my guess.
So, this creature, if you believe this, is widespread, or creatures like it, or varieties of the Bigfoot creature and ape creature. We went from Marble Mountain to Alaska, to Thailand. 3 different sightings and or encounters, and who knows where else it will show up. So,
yeah. By the way, Bill, 5,600 miles.
Okay, 5,600 miles.
Just so you know.
I was initially going to punch out the number 6,000, but
yeah, you were right there.
I'm not that savvy to mileage, as you know.
I'm normally pretty savvy, but I'm a little tired at the moment.
The
savvy calculator's not working.
Yes, my mathematical mental capacity is diminished at the moment. I used to love Sherlock Holmes dissecting, his claims to Watson,
Yes.
He described the owner of the derby they found on the street, and Watson would look at him and say, "How do you know all this?" And he'd say, "Elementary, Watson. The wax on the brim of the hat is indicative that the man was on hard times and had his gas turned off." All of this crazy stuff.
By the way, that's great, Bill, off the top of your head.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm that way. I'm like a crazy man for this kind of trivia. Elementary, my dear Watson. After you have eliminated all that is untrue, whatever is left simply must be the truth. No matter how bizarre it may seem.
Bill, I love crossword puzzles, and maybe our fans don't know that. So every morning I do the New York Times crossword puzzle. And even though I live in North Carolina, of course, it's all online now. And there was a clue a couple of days ago. Any of you crossword junkies out there saw it. And it was like, the easiest thing to be fooled by is a clear blank. And it was a Sherlock Holmes quote.
Say it again. The easiest thing to...
It was like, I'm paraphrasing it, but
Okay.
the easiest thing to be fooled by is a clear blank.
Wow, I can't even venture a guess at that one.
No, it's so obvious, but I didn't get it until I looked at it for a while. It's fake.
A clear fake?
The fake. So, if something is fake and it's really, or maybe it was a great fake.
Okay.
So you're fooled by something because you see it and you think it's real, but it's fake.
Right.
Classic Sherlock Holmes quote.
Yeah, like fake Bigfoot pictures.
Whoa. Yeah. I've told you, Bill, I don't want to go down the whole rabbit hole, but that's the most frustrating thing to me, folks, doing this podcast about Bigfoot. My brother's got all the books going and stuff, and I'm this straight man scientific guy that comes into this. And what's frustrating to me is just there's so many fakes.
Yeah.
Whereas, I think in UAP, UFO world, I don't think there's people faking UAPs and UFOs. I think people see some things sometimes that have a logical explanation.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think there's a lot of people putting aircraft up and balloons up and stuff to trick people. I'm not saying it doesn't happen.
Right.
But there's not a lot of it.
Right. Unfortunately, today we have incredible CGI capabilities, and
that's different.
People are doing that,
They're faking the videos for sure, and it's going to get worse.
Right.
All this AI stuff.
Right. Well, just because of that doesn't mean reality is not present at the same time.
No, absolutely.
So.
All right, Bill, you want to do some listener mail?
Absolutely. Let's have that.
And we got some good ones this week, folks. And thanks so much for writing in. So our first one comes in from Brian. And he says, I thought you guys might want to read the book I just finished. It's called Isaac's Storm, and it's by Eric Larson. Mm-hmm. And Brian, I am a huge Eric Larson fan, but I have not read this yet. So thank you for sending it over. And I'll talk about some of my favorite Eric Larson books after I read your letter. Mm-hmm. But it is about the 1900 Galveston hurricane. Mm-hmm. And Bill, have you heard about this hurricane before?
Well, this was a long time ago.
Well, 1900. So.
Yeah, and it trashed the city of Galveston. They had fires.
6,000 people died.
Yeah, it was horrible, man.
6,000 people died. And it's because back then there was very little weather forecasting. And Brian writes in saying that this book was hard to read because 6,000 people died, and they're talking about it. So pretty wild stuff. And then Brian transitions and says, WJ, you once said that you were interested in amateur radio. Mm-hmm. And I know you and KJ are about my age. Mm-hmm. And he says, check out this podcast, 50 Years of Maximum Rock and Roll. Bob Heel just died, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Heil, just died last year, but his company, Heel Sound, is the only equipment manufacturer in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Wow.
Yeah, and he was also a lifetime ham radio operator, right. And he worked with bands like the Grateful Dead, the Who, the Eagles, and many more.
Now, let me butt in, Kev.
Yeah.
Who wrote this email?
His name is Brian.
Brian.
He's on a farm in northeastern South Dakota.
Kev, we could look this up, but I'd like Brian to contribute. Brian, if you know what equipment that Heil or Heel contributed to the rock and roll industry, chime back in with us and let us know.
Yeah, let us know.
Because you would think, he says he's the only equipment manufacturer in the Hall of Fame. But I mean, what about like Fender? There's a lot of equipment, for different manufacturers, but I don't know jack.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know if Fender guitars are in the Hall of Fame. I just don't know, folks. It's not my thing.
Yeah, it's not my thing either,
Yeah. But so anyway, Brian, you talk about Eric Larson. Bill, have you read any of Eric Larson's books?
Zero.
Okay, so one of my favorite books of all time, and Bill, I know you know the premise of this story. You may not recognize it by the title, but he writes, I would call it historical fiction.
Okay.
So it's based on fact, but maybe dressed up a little bit, not to deceive you, but just because nobody was really there that can tell you about what happened.
Right.
But one of my favorite books, which is actually which is an actual creep fest, is called The Devil in the White City. And The Devil in the White City by Eric Larson, folks, if you want to read a good book. It's about the 1900 or 1895 World's Fair in Chicago. So they called that the White City when they built all of these structures for the World's Fair. And by the way, all of them are gone now, as far as I know.
Did this have anything to do with that murder hotel?
Yes.
Yeah, that was freaking hideous.
Yes. So this guy built this hotel and killed a bunch of young women in this hotel during the preparations and during the 1895 World's Fair, or they didn't call it World's Fair back there. Then they called it the Global Expo or Global Exposition.
I mean, what a fiend. He took advantage of the fact that he knew people were going to be needing lodging and rooms to come there. And he had that whole joint rigged up with trapdoors and places to drag them into the
incinerator
basement.
to burn their bodies.
What a freaking fiend.
But great book by Eric Larson. You want to get the creep on, folks? And by the way, it's so cool. It goes chapter to chapter, like from the preparation of the World's Fair and then to the murder hotel and back to the preparation for the World's Fair. So it's kind of cool. Like you're learning about the World's Fair, which is independent in some ways of this horror hotel, and then you're in the horror hotel. So super cool. So that one, Brian, and if you haven't read The Splendid and the Vile, which is a fantastic story about the Blitzkrieg in London, written from the perspective of the Churchill family. So Winston and his family, as they're living through the Blitz in London. So I read that during the lockdown, the COVID lockdown, and it was fantastic.
These are both by Larson?
Well, both by Larson. Yeah,
you got to send me over the names of the books and the author's name again. I'm going to make it a point of picking them up.
Yeah, definitely pick up The Devil in the White City. You'll love it, and it's easy to read, too, because just like your books, Bill, it's like you read it, for a chapter, which is like 6 or 7 pages. You can put it down. Yeah. Read the next chapter the next night.
Yeah,
really good.
Well,
and I won't give away. They were competing. The prior Global Expo was in Paris, and the Parisians built the Eiffel Tower. So when they were going to host it in Chicago, they had to come up with something better or as good as the Eiffel Tower. And I won't tell you what it was, but it's pretty spectacular.
Wow.
And it's not there now, so you'd never know it if you didn't read the book.
Fantastic, man.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So that's your teaser. All right, our next letter comes in. But thanks, Brian. You can see how excited I was about that. Eric Larson.
Absolutely.
So Mark writes in and says, amazing show. And he says, I've listened to all 11 books in the last week and also your podcasts. Okay, Mark, you need another hobby, okay?
Why don't you come and wax my car?
He says, I'm now hungry for more. And I'm trying to find other series that are anywhere near as good. I said, well, I can't recommend any of those to you, Mark. But really, the main difference between what my brother and I do and what others do is that we're doing it as a conversation with two different people with two different backgrounds that are 600 miles apart over Skype. So I haven't seen that before from anybody else. Doesn't mean there's not good stuff out there.
Yeah.
But Mark says, I live on a small island called Guernsey. I think it's really Jersey off the UK coast and sadly too far away to get any experience with the hairy one.
Uh-huh. Well, wait a minute. Are you saying there's no hairy women around you?
Well, I'm not going to comment on that. Our island, though, is full of ghost experiences, from German concentration camps to other sinister sites, all with regular creep. Also, have a ghost story from my ma, who was one of the very few people to have slept in the Tower of London and witnessed its paranormal goings-on. So, Bill, I think you got to get that story from our brother Marco, because I was in the Tower of London 2 summers ago for the first time, even though I had walked by it like 50 times over the last 30 years.
Right.
And man, that is a creepy place with some creepy history.
Yeah, it's not exactly inviting you for a stay.
No. I don't know if I would stay there for the night either. So hats off to you.
Kev, I don't know why these people are compelled to stay in these freaking hideous places.
I don't know. Must have paid a lot of money for it, too.
Yeah, how about a power outage when you're in there? How about that, folks?
All right. Now, last email, Bill, completely changing gears, is from Arthur. And Arthur says, congrats on your 5150 amp, Mr. WJ.
Yeah, baby.
I, too, am a little old and just got me a 5150 Stealth 50-watt head, and I'm loving it.
Yeah, baby.
As mature guys, we have to keep the rock and roll alive. My wife and I listen to the show every week. It's our relaxed time to walk our dog around the neighborhood and enjoy the show. One of our favorite times in life, so keep rocking. Thanks for all the great content. And here you go, Bill. Here's your shopping list, and make sure you get you a good overdrive, phaser, and maybe an EQ pedal to light that beast up.
Let me tell you something, bro. I'm way ahead of you. I got this overdrive pedal, and when I punch that switch, man, it'll freaking curl your hair.
Awesome.
I try to wait till the neighbors are asleep before I do it.
Well, it's good to have goals.
My goal in life is to cause as much disturbance as I can, and I think I'm succeeding.
You're doing well. I'm not even there, but I know you're doing well. All right, Bill, great podcast, folks. If you can leave us a 5-star review, even if you've left us one before, that's great. And folks, honestly, if you're not having fun at the podcast, don't leave us a review. Just, go and listen to a different podcast. It's not for everyone, but we really need those 5-star reviews, because it's really the only way we have to promote the podcast to get more listeners. And by getting more listeners, we can do a better job staying on schedule and bringing you better content. So thank you so much, folks.
Excellent, Kev. And also for the books, folks, 5 stars, baby. And remember, if you happen to be in the wilderness in Oregon, maybe Alaska, bow hunting in the woods or hiking. Or maybe you're on a trip to Thailand or Vietnam. You best remember one thing, my friends. Always carry more gun than you think you're going to need. Sleep tight.